Hi and welcome. I'm Dr. Scott Taransky, and I'm going live 5 times this week, one every day, bringing you a half hour of teaching in regards to parenting. This particular live is going live in homeschool groups. It's on live on TikTok and it's other places, so you might see it in these various places. But it's it's very specific teaching that's practical and biblical and focused on the heart of a child. I think you're going to find today's session particularly helpful because we're going to address patterns that children have. And I want you to understand the difference between a heart-based approach and behavior modification, what that's going to look like. I want to ask you, first of all, I want to tell you something very important right at the beginning here in case you have to drop off. I want to offer you the privilege of watching me coach a family live on Zoom. This is a totally free thing you can watch. Every three times a year, I coach a family, and I train coaches. And part of the benefits of all those coaches is that I take on a new family I've never met before, and I work with that family. And I do it on Zoom, and I allow those coaches to watch. And I'm opening it up this time to anybody who wants to see it. So if you want to watch me over the next 8 weeks work with a very specific family, then you can do that. They've agreed to do this, to allow me to make it available to other people in exchange for not having to pay my fee of $1,995 to be coached. So I'm coaching them for free. They're working hard, and we're going to protect their privacy by not recording the event. We're not talking about their last names, but you can watch it. If you'd like the link to be able to watch it, then I want you to go to biblicalparenting.org, go up to the contact form up there, just says contact, and it'll come up and say, do you want to sign up for free email parenting tips? Just put a comment in the bottom there, put your email address and your name, and a comment that says, I want to watch Dr. Taransky coach this family, or please send me the Zoom link, or something like that, and I'll know that's what you want. Now, we are not pre-recording this or recording it at all to protect their privacy. It's taking place every Wednesday starting January 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a fixed time because I'm actually working with a family I've never met before. I am so confident that the Biblical Parenting Coaching Program changes people, and we use a heart-based approach to do that. I want to let you watch me do it. So feel free to go to biblicalparenting.org, click on the contact form, tell me your name, email address, I'll send you the link, and we'll get you be able to watch that my Zoom conference that I'm doing. If you're seeing this later in the period of time, then you miss out on that. But note, I do this 3 times a year. I train coaches, so you can still interact with me through the contact form, and I'll be able to respond to you. Today's session is about a heart-based approach to parenting. How is it different than behavior modification? And it's one of 5 lives that I'm doing. I did a live yesterday on emotions in children, and I appreciate all the kind comments people made, and you were taking notes feverishly. I know you're going to do that again today because it's heavy on the content. I'm going to give you a lot of content here that you can use right away as you're working with your children. Tomorrow I'm going to do one on technology and how we can use technology to build character in children and deal with some of the struggles that families have regarding technology. The next day I'm dealing with one on ADHD and how do we use a heart-based approach to address ADHD as we're working with children. And then also, the next day I'm doing one on sibling conflict. Now these are 5 different areas of parenting that are really helpful for parents to be able to address in their homes, common areas. And I know that these are particularly helpful for homeschoolers. We homeschooled our kids. I know that a lot of families that are watching this are homeschool families. So I wanted to choose subjects that would be particularly helpful for you. When we talk about the heart, everybody wants to reach the heart of their child. But what is the heart? That's the question. And I don't think people know exactly how to reach the heart of their child, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. But in order to understand this, we have to go back to the Bible. And we ask the question of God's Word, what is the heart? What does that mean as we're looking at the Bible? Because the word heart is used 750 times in the Bible. Now we take off about 350 of those times to talk about the physical heart. And we're left with this metaphysical heart that the Bible talks about. And you can recall some of those verses that we delight yourself in the Lord. He'll give you the desires of your heart. Or guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Or where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. or believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead and then you'll be saved. All of these verses exist in the Bible, and I took all of them and I categorized all 400 of them into different categories and developed and discovered these 9 functions of the heart. And with these 9 functions of the heart, then, we're able to reach children on a deeper level. And I want to tell you more about what the heart looks like, but I want to contrast that with what parents typically use today, and that is behavior modification. Now, behavior modification uses reward and punishment to motivate children to change. It works in the short run. If you say to a child, and this is what parents do, even Christian parents, as they're starting out with their children, they use reward and punishment. And they don't realize the dangers that are taking place when they do so. So you say to a preschool to clean up your toys and you can have a snack. Or a child who's in elementary school, you say finish your homework and you can watch a video. Or a child that's older, clean your room and we can have a friend over. So there's this always giving them something. And in fact, what happens then, when we feed children with a steady diet of reward and punishment, it changes the way they think. They start asking the wrong questions about life. They ask questions like, are you going to pay me for this? What's in it for me? What are you going to give me? What's the minimum I need to do in order to get my reward? Those are the wrong questions that children should be asking about life. After all, why should they clean up their toys or finish their homework or clean their room? It's not so they can get something out of it. It's because it's the right thing to do. Now we're talking about the difference between external motivation and internal motivation. Oh, behavior modification works in the short run. That's why it's used in schools. You've got the red light and the green light and the yellow light, and children are modifying their behavior in order to get their green light or to be able to get their car to move around the room or whatever it is they're trying to do in order to get their reward. But they're not asking the more significant questions that exist inside of the heart of a person. Now, when God talks about the heart, he describes it as this like internal processing unit. It's Jesus who said, it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. He gives a list of all of these offenses, all these bad things. He says these things come out of the heart of a person. So that leads us to realize that there are tendencies. And these tendencies that children have are the key things that help us move into the heart. If you see that your child has a tendency to argue or a tendency to whine or a tendency to complain or a tendency to ignore you when you give a task or a tendency to respond poorly to correction or a tendency to be mean, any of these things that are tendencies that children have, once you identify those, now you have an access to the heart. Let me just pause for a moment. And in the comments, why don't you just jot down a tendency that you see in your child that you are concerned about. Take a moment and jot a tendency in your child that you feel concerned about, because when you know that there's a tendency there, you know you need to work on this in a heart level. That's what we talked so much yesterday about emotions and how you can't use behavior modification to bring about change in emotions. Otherwise, children just change their behavior and the heart really is left untouched, and that's where emotions are experienced. We know that from God's words. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. Or Jesus said to his disciples, do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. It's inside of the heart that emotions reside. So we want our children to be able to change on a deeper level, not just change their behavior. We want them to change their hearts. Now we're going to move to this deeper level, and I want to show you some very specific ways to do that. One of the things I want to give you today is access to my introductory offer called First Steps in Biblical Parenting. It's $11 only, and it's 100 4-minute videos. I just received an email from a lady today. We're using these videos. We're posting 2 of them to the rest of our church, because what I do is you pay $11 for this, and then you buy the site license if you're a church leader, and you pay $98. You can give them away to everyone in your church, free. You can post them in a Dropbox. You can give them away a couple at a time like this lady's doing. And if you go to my website, biblicalparenting.org, and right at the top, there's this box that says First Steps in Biblical Parenting. You click on that, you'll read more about it, and you can pay $11 and get these 100 4-minute videos, each one dealing with a problem in parenting, each one containing a scripture verse. I know that's a ridiculously low price, but what I'm trying to do is introduce you to biblical parenting so you understand it. When you purchase that, it will ask you, do you want to buy also the $19 lecture series by me, where I'm giving 3 strategic lectures, 1 hour long. They're content driven. So you have a lot of content in those lectures that will help you to understand more of a heart-based approach. So take a look at that, and you can see it right on my website, biblicalparenting.org. And when you sign up for it, you'll have access to it. It's all downloadable. And if you want the site license, it costs $98. You can, if you're a church leader, what a great way to empower everyone in your church to have the resources they need to understand and work with biblical parenting. So let's go back now and talk about these tendencies. Maybe you've identified some. They're in the comments there that you're looking at. And let me see if I can see comments that maybe you're writing there. Let's see. Can I? Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, I guess I can't see as well as I would like your comments. But anyway, put them in there, and I would love to look at them later and see what some of those comments are. If you have a tendency in a child, you know you're dealing with a heart-related issue. Okay, so now, one of the things that we know if we're going to bring about change in a person is we want to build internal motivation, not external motivation. If children are always motivated by externals, then it's not bringing about the deeper change that children need inside of their hearts. And so we want to bring about this internal change, and we know tendencies drive us there. So now let's talk about a key element that makes heart-based approach different than what we normally see. When you have a problem in a child's life, most parents use correction and rely heavily on correction to get things done or to bring about change. When you use correction to bring about change, it's rather negative, it's punitive. If you do this, I'm going to take this away from you, and so on. Now, we still use correction in a heart-based approach, but the primary emphasis is not on correction, it's on training. That's the word that's used in the Bible for working with children. Train up a child in the way he should go. Training is so important. In the New Testament, in Ephesians 6, it talks about fathers training up their children. It's the word training that becomes so significant. And what does training do? This is one key element. If you get this one idea, it's going to change your parenting to be much more positive as you work with your children. If you work with correction, then you're saying to a child, stop it, cut it out. I can't believe you're doing this again. And you're focusing on the negative that they're doing. It's just negative. But if you focus on training, okay, you're moving from point A over here to point B, and you're moving children in this direction. Now we're working on the quality the child needs in order to change what's going on inside of their behavior. Let's say a child is arguing, or he's whining, or he's disrespectful, or whatever, a poor response to correction, whatever it is, and you want him to have a different response. If you choose where we want to go, I'm going to help you develop a better response to instructions, or I'm going to teach you how to accept no as an answer instead of arguing and badgering and whining. Then now we're moving toward where we want to go. How do you accept no as an answer? How do you respond to that? I think it's just very important to grasp this idea of if we know where we're going, then we can develop training exercises. In fact, life becomes training as we're moving a child in that direction. We're going to find that the training exercises happen every day in the course of life. This is why I continually say that parents are the best counselors for their children if they have a good plan. That's what I believe. And that's why I invest so much in parents, to help parents make changes. You see, here's what happens in many parents' lives. They say, my child has a tendency to do the wrong thing, therefore, I'm going to get him a counselor. Now, counseling can be helpful for children. I think that most children learn better from their parents who are trained, and because it happens in the day-to-day. I don't think children learn as best by playing with sand or Legos or sitting on a couch talking to a counselor. I think they learn best in life. And so I want to empower parents to be these trainers for their children in order to help them to make significant changes in their children. So training becomes this key element that moves a child forward. The other thing we have to think about is we're trying to build internal motivation inside of a child. This is hard sometimes, but you have to realize that God has placed inside of a person some equipment. And a heart-based approach draws upon this equipment. One piece of equipment, besides the heart itself, we have the conscience, a word that's used 30 times in the New Testament. Notice how practical the conscience is. The conscience has 4 parts. Let me just talk to you about one in particular. The first part of the conscience is do what's right. Now, you know that. The conscience prompts you every day. You have the sense of obligation. I need to. It's a great thing that we'll talk about more when we deal with ADHD, because it's going to be a key to helping children overcome impulses. Because if you have more obligation, and obligation says I need to, then it'll help you deal with the impulses you have. Or it'll help you deal with the desires you have too. It's these desires that children have that get them into trouble many times. And so when the I want to, the desires, battle with the I need to, and the I need to wins, then we call that responsibility. I need to go out and mow my grass, but I don't want to. I want to sit and read a book. When the I need to wins over the I want to, we have what we call responsibility. Obligation is the foundation of responsibility. Most children don't have enough obligation to help them manage electronics, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. They don't have enough obligation that they need to deal with the I want to. They're driven by their feelings. They're driven by their desires, and they need more training in the obligation area. That's what the conscience does. It provides a sense of duty. That's why Paul uses the term conscience in Acts 23:1 when he says, I fulfilled my duty before God in all good conscience to this day. Duty. Children need a greater sense of duty. Parents can train that. It builds internal motivation in children. And what happens when you do your duty? You feel better about it. This is internal motivation growing inside of the heart. It's the equipment that God has placed inside of a person. And that's why it's so valuable to be parenting in a way that corresponds to what God has done and is doing in the life of a child. Inside of the heart, we have the Holy Spirit speaking, we have the conscience working, we have other things going on that are the basis for responsibility that are very valuable, and we can train our children how to do that. Let's take an example. Let's take an example of arguing. I was talking to a mom just yesterday, a mom of a 10-year-old, and this little guy argues a lot, and both mom and dad are very relational. And that's the way they want to be. They just want their family to be a team. And I think their relational approach is great. It's just not working with this little guy because he views himself as a peer, which means his voice is just as important as everybody else's. And he ought to be able to argue his way into whatever. He can just argue himself. And so he always has an argument that he can bring to the situation. And so mom's frustrated with that because she says, I'm trying to reason with him. Well, that's what arguing is. Arguing is using logic and reason to change someone's mind. And when children use this in the workshop of their heart, so let's say here's the heart of a child, okay? Inside of the heart, this child has a workshop. And when he doesn't get what he wants, he goes into the workshop to come up with a plan. And in this plan, he says, okay, if I'm not getting what I want, then I'm going to argue about it. I'm going to use logic and information to bring about a change here. And so the problem is mom gets stuck in these arguments, and this child then becomes disrespectful and demanding and entitled, and she knows something's wrong. And I say to these parents, don't lose your relational approach. Relationship is great, but this boy needs something else. He needs some firmness, and firmness builds character inside of a child. You want to be working on this firmness with him, and one of the ways you're going to do that is what I call stop the process earlier. Firmness is going to say, we're not going this direction here. We're going to stop the process. It takes two to argue, but it only takes one to stop. The problem with arguing is you don't realize you're into an argument until you're kind of into it a ways, and you see, we're not getting anywhere here. This child isn't trying to be persuaded by me by reason. He just doesn't want to do what I've told him to do. And so he's arguing to delay or get his way, and he's got a problem. So we're going to make a change here, and the mom's going to stop arguing, the dad's going to stop arguing and just say, look, we're arguing. We can't argue. I'm not going to argue with you. The answer is no. That's going to change some things inside of the child. That's firmness in action. So now the child, he has this arguing in the workshop of his heart. That's his approach. That's his tendency. Remember, the heart is this like the CPU of a person. That's where you go to solve your problems. When you have a trigger in life, annoying brother, you're going to respond in a particular way. We'll talk about that on Friday with sibling conflict. If you really want to be on this video game and mom calls you to get off of it, then these desires are there. What are you going to do in that situation? We'll talk about that tomorrow with technology. The point is, we all have tendencies inside of our hearts, so we must train the heart. We must change the tendencies. So we're going to shut down the arguing tool that a child has. He goes into his workshop of his heart, the arguing tool, he pulls out, it doesn't work anymore because mom says, I'm sorry, I can't argue with you. The answer is no, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. The second thing, he's going to go, what is he going to do when he goes back into the heart? He's going to say, he'll pull out the badgering tool. The badgering tool is a great tool. When can I? Mom, you said I could come back and do this. Mom, I should be able to do that. Whatever, over and over again. Children badger. It's a tool. And it's an invitation for parents to argue with their children again, or to give reasons for what they're doing. It's not bad to give children reasons. It's not even bad to talk to children. But sometimes talking gets put in the wrong places in parenting. When you talk to children, after you've given them an instruction and they're using arguing or badgering to delay, then talking is not a good time. That's not a good thing to be doing at that moment. We stop the talking and we go to action. We call that our action point. We say, I'm not going to talk to you right now. What you're doing is wrong. It's like you're bruising me with this badgering stuff. I'm not going to allow you to do that. You see, we're trying to change the tendencies that a child has. So the child doesn't going to work. So he's going to go back into the heart. What's he going to do now? He pulls out another tool. Now he's bringing out the tool of whining and complaining, because he has a belief inside the heart. We know that beliefs exist inside of the heart. And so he has this belief that if I'm not getting my way, I have the right to make everybody else miserable. And so children whine and complain. And sometimes parents then focus on the whining and complain and argue with their children. We're going to stop that. We're just going to say to a child who's whining and complaining, I'm sorry, you're whining and complaining. I can't talk to you right now if you're going to whine and complain. If you're focusing on the problem, then I can't help you. Let me explain that a little bit more about what whining is. Whining and complaining focus on the problem. And there's two kinds of people in the world. There's whiners and there's solvers. Whiners focus on the problem. Solvers focus on the solution. Many children believe parents are the problem solvers of life, so they come and whine and complain to their parents. And parents say, oh yeah, I'm the problem solver. I'll solve this problem. Got a problem here. We want children to be internally motivated to solve problems for themselves. So we're going to change the way we're going to work with this child. For example, a child comes into the kitchen and says, I'm hungry. Doesn't even use a whiny voice, but is focusing on the problem. You might say to the child, oh, that's focusing on the problem. Why don't you go back out, come back in and try again? What's the child going to do now? In fact, what does it mean to focus on the solution, not just the problem? Well, it means the child's going to come back and say, Mom, could I please have a snack? That's the solution instead of the problem. Do you see the difference between focusing on problems and focusing on solutions? Children who view themselves as victims in life are powerless because they always believe that everyone else has the power and they don't have any power. And so if everybody else would change, I'd be fine. What we're trying to do is help our children realize that if they own the problem, they can own the solution, and great things can happen in their lives. So we're not going to allow that pattern of whining and complaining to take place. You might say to a child, look, you're whining and complaining. It looks like you want to be sad right now. That's okay. Why don't you go be sad by yourself in the hall? But don't be around here because we don't want to be sad. When you're ready to be happy, come out and join us. We're going to change the tendencies. Children who believe that they can make everybody else miserable because they don't get what they want have a problem. And so we're going to help them change. We're changing the internal motivation inside of a child. Let me tell you another example. I was working with a mom of a 16-year-old homeschool boy just this week. And the 16-year-old, and she's saying, I don't know, all this resistance that we're going on, we've got resistance that's taking place all the time. I don't know whether I should stop homeschooling him because I've got all this resistance. So, very important questions I wanted to ask. Is he making progress? Are you still able to work with him? Or is he totally shutting you down and not getting anything done? The answer to the question was this: we are still accomplishing all we need to do. There's just a lot of tension in the relationship. I said, okay, that's very important because if we're not getting anything done, maybe we do need to look for another option besides homeschooling for this child to get educated because he's totally resisting. But if we're getting things done, what it means is that mom has to do a lot of work to keep him going. He's not internally motivated to move forward. And so what I want to do is help mom move to building the internal motivation and work on the process, not just the issue. I'm going to talk more about process and issue in just a moment. But before I do, let me just explain. There's something happens developmentally in children around age 14 where they start saying, I don't want people telling me what to do. You hear it all the time. And so they resist. I'm tired of people telling me what to do. And I talk to 14-year-olds. I understand this. They don't want people telling them what to do. And the solution is start telling yourself what to do. Because if you start telling yourself what to do, then you're going to get things done and your parents are going to have to tell you what to do. There's things that are required for maturity. Your parents see that and they know that and they want to move you in that direction. So start telling yourself what to do, which is part of what the conscience does to you, especially in this one area of obligation and getting things done. And if you start doing that, then your parents won't be having to tell you what to do. You'll be internally motivated. It's the heart at work. So we went to work here and I started giving mom some solutions. And we started looking for ways to help this child be internally motivated to get things done. Do I need to sit here and work with you on your math to make sure you're doing it? Or can I leave you to get the math done and report back to me in the next few minutes? How long do you think it's going to take you to finish your math? And we're going to move. Tell the child, I'm going to help you move to a place where you are independent. You don't have to have me sitting next to you. But if you're not getting it done, I do have to help you. And I will monitor you and keep you going. Because a child who doesn't have self-control needs parental control. But if you develop the self-control, which is that internal motivation, then good things happen. Okay, issue versus process. And I'm going to conclude with this in just a moment. But let me just ask you, would you like, share, and comment this on this video just so other people can get the wisdom that I think is built into this heart-based approach? I'd really like to reach more people, and you can help me by passing these words on. Secondly, the first steps in biblical parenting is my introductory package for you. It's $11, 100 4-minute videos that you can use, and you can find them at the top of biblicalparenting.org. Just click on the link and you'll have access to them right away. And you can watch my Zoom that I'm actually gonna coach a family live, and you can watch that. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, and if you want access to that, so you can watch me actually work with a family live for 8 weeks, starting January 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll give you the Zoom link. Just go to my website, click on the contact form, and ask for the link, and I'll share it with you along with kind of the rules, because I don't want you commenting. All you get to do is watch to just protect this family. But you can see a heart-based approach in action. I don't know this family. I just know that they need help, and I'm going to help them deal with their 11-year-old that has some real challenges and is resistant and self-focused, and we're going to make some changes there. And you can watch me do that. So take a look at that. Let me just give you this final idea here about process versus issue. Because I think many parents focus on the issue or the task. We have tasks to do: math, science, history, homework, chores, whatever the tasks are. And parents often feel like if I get my kids to do the tasks, then I've done my job as a parent. And I want to say that's not enough. It's in the process that children learn character. It's in the process that children develop the strength they need to have the internal integrity to match what they need to do. If your child is arguing with you, then move away from the discussion. We're not talking about the dirty shirt, allowing you to wear that dirty shirt again. We're not talking about letting you watch a video right now. We're talking about the way you're treating me right now. We're moving from the issue to the process. When we move from the issue to the process, we're focusing on character. When we move from the issue to the process, we're building the internal motivation, the qualities that children need. Now, when I talk about a heart-based approach, you have to realize I've written 17 books on the family. I'm a professor at Concordia University. I deal with this every day. I'm trying to give you some top-level ideas to draw you in so that you will think about, how can I parent in a way that will reach my child in a stronger way? I work with parents, and parents work with their children. And my end users are the kids. I want to raise this next generation, and I want to do it through the parents because that's God's design. And so when parents grab onto this heart-based approach, they understand what it looks like, then it radically changes the way they parent. It's not the same. You're going to have to make major changes in the way you think. Now, some of you are already using some of these heart-based approaches because you're Christians and you understand the heart. But there's all these nuances that are involved in this process that you're going to want to learn, and I'd love to teach you. So I hope you'll check out some of the more resources that we have and stick with me. Tomorrow at this same time, I'm going to talk about technology, a major problem, but I believe we can use technology to build integrity and character in children. So we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. In the meantime, please pass this video on to others and share it with others, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow at this same time. God bless you.